To our joint meeting, Manatee County in August. I have to check the date. It's the 13th, 2014. Welcome and thank you all. We're going to open with a moment of silence and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance following. Thank you. If you'd please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so since the last time we met in Charlotte County, we've had some new faces. So if we could start all the way over on the other side with Bridget, and if you could go around and introduce yourself so that everybody gets to know all of our counterparts.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Bridget Ziegler. I'm District 1 of Sarasota County.
Shirley Brown, District 4, Sarasota.
Caroline Zucker, District 3, Sarasota County.
Jane Goodwin, District 5, Chair of the School Board.
Lori White, Superintendent, Sarasota County.
Kovach, Vice Chair, Sarasota School Board.
Mitzi Corcoran, Chief Financial Officer, Sarasota County.
Don Hall, Deputy Superintendent for Operations with Manatee County.
Diana Green, Deputy Superintendent for Instructional Services, Manatee County.
Karen Carpenter, Manatee County School Board Member, District 4.
Julie Ranabar, Manatee County District 5 and Chair.
Rick Mills, Superintendent.
Bob Gauss, School Board Member, District 1.
Chuck Bradley, Assistant Superintendent of Learning for Charlotte County Schools.
Doug Whitaker, Superintendent, Charlotte County.
Ian Vincent, Charlotte County Chairman.
Lee Swift, District 1, Charlotte County, and Vice Chairman.
Thank you. Aline Miller, District 2, Charlotte County.
Barbara Rundle, Charlotte County.
Bob Seeger, Charlotte County.
Thank you all. And then we do have a couple of, I think we have a school board candidate, Mr. Marsh in the back, and then Mr. Leatherman from, is it Sarasota County? Thank you. And I think we've covered our guests. Thank you all. And this is a great opportunity for us to share information with our 3 counties and do our best to help our children in our school districts. And school's about to open. I want to thank you all. I know this is a busy time, but I appreciate that you all made a time to come here today. And I think our first topic on here, each county has picked 2 topics to cover. And our first one is the 1 mill and how it's allocated. And I would let Charlotte County, I don't know who wants to speak, if it's the superintendent or the chair, but I'll defer to you all to bring it up and then we can go around and have discussion.
I believe we had this conversation in one of our previous workshops, but obviously we're not only interested but envious in the 1 mill that Sarasota has. So as a board, we kind of had the discussion about picking your brains, how you made it happen, and exactly what you've done with the 1 mill and the results you're seeing from the 1 mill. So it's really an issue. It's for you. Thank you.
Say that, we've been very fortunate in that we've passed the referendum 4 times, starting in 2002. We began working on this in 2001, and I say we because I was very involved in all 4 of those campaigns. But basically, the thing that's so significant, I think, is that Florida has not been known to fund education well. And this money that we receive, the 1 mill that we receive, gives our superintendent the ability of going from good to great, to more excellence, and it gives her the ability of deciding what things are needed at every school. We have so many things, as you all know, which are siloed, and we can't use money at the discretion or at the will of the superintendent. And what this money provides is it provides the flexibility that all superintendents need to take care of certain issues at a school. It could be an assistant principal, it could be a guidance counselor, it could be a number of things. Art, music teachers, which we think are very, very important, but it has given us that flexibility. It's also given us the flexibility of paying our teachers well so that we can be competitive. In 2001, we were behind the 8 ball. We were looking for teachers nationally. And we will have that shortage again, I predict, in another 5 years. We have a number of teachers who are now retiring. You all are probably facing the same thing. And we know that we need to be competitive on the national level.
Lori, if one of you would like to address too, because you do something very interesting on your paychecks for all of your staff. Could you kind of share with us what you do on the accountability side for this?
Address the first
Sure.
question before
Sure.
we move to the
Sorry.
second?
Yes.
All right, thank you. Because one of the ways that I believe we've been able to get our 1 mil and keep it is that we're all out in the community. We're out and talking, and we don't stop selling the school system. I mean, that's what we do all the time. So even though it's every 4 years, we're always out there talking. And now we also put on positive entertainment, if you will, at our board meeting, our first board meeting. We have our choruses come in, and we have our musical instrument people come in, so that the community as a whole can see what we're doing with that 1 mil extra that we have. So, and we make sure to tie all those performances and everything to the fact that we're able to do this because of that 1 mil. And then we were at the foundation, and the newspapers. So we were constantly talking to people, trying to get this message out. And by people, I mean parents, children, and our teachers as well, and classified staff, have meetings with them.
What we did a number of years ago is print on the paycheck what the actual dollar amount that the 1 mil or the portion of that on our salaries, what that represents. Now, when we went to the no longer printing paychecks as a cost savings, we lost that ability. So we've messaged it in other ways. We certainly have it as part of the budgeting process, because every school, you'll see in your handout that we have there for you how the 1 mil is allocated in each of the formulas at the different levels. So that process, as it works to the school level, it's apparent to those budget teams at the school exactly what is it paying for. We actually do online for every school. We have a PowerPoint that describes specifically what are the positions that are funded with the addition of the 1 mil. As you can, if you look at the final page, it looks at the distribution of the dollar amount. So on one side, you see the positions that are allocated. On the last page, you see the actual dollar amount. Significant portion of it is for the additional 30 minutes. That means a higher salary for our teachers, but it also means more instructional time and the continuation of that funding. In addition, you see a big significant dollar amount is for all art and music teachers. We also allocate funds to our charter schools. We also find out from our charter schools exactly what they're funding, and that's part of the information we provide on our website for the public. So there's total transparency on how these monies are spent.
Yes, Ms. Brown.
Also, we post all of this information on our website. It used to be, while we were having the referendum, it was out there a little easier. Now you've got to go through a few places to find it after we've changed our website. But we had a cumulative one. We showed this is how we sent it, and then here's for each school where it went and how it went. And then here's the cumulative one, and we've got it from the first day we passed it until current. So, and then we also have a financial advisory committee that oversees to make sure that the public knows that how we promise to spend the money and how we say we're spending the money is how it's actually being spent.
I see that these mics are not normal. It says that March 25th they renewed it. Do you hold a special election just for the referendum? And does the school district pay for or the supervisor, school district picks up the cost of that? Was that a conscious decision so that you could kind of target?
The first time we were able to do it, we did it in March before our year started. And then, we've been looking at, you back it up, we can't really back it up to March of an odd year because, not March, November of an odd year because there is no election on a November of an odd year. We do try to have it coincide with municipal elections.
We did make a conscious effort to do it that way. In 2001, when we formed a committee, CBS, Citizens for Better Schools, we had been unsuccessful with a referendum in a very short time before we went out and tried it again. And we wanted to have a dialogue and a talk with our community. And, when you have something done in a November election, you get lost in the crowd. And it costs a lot more to fund an issue for a general election. What did it cost? Around $400,000, and that varies with how much early voting and overtime you pay the supervisor of elections and so forth. It cost us $400,000 to receive over $40 million per year for 4 years. Is that a good return on the investment? I think so. And this year we won by 77%, so we're very, very pleased with that.
Mrs. White, when you went to a 30-minute extra long day, what did you do with that 30 minutes? Was it added, a couple minutes to each subject? Was it a special program that was implemented? What did you do with that?
It was additional instructional time. So how that was distributed was in the courses that were already there. So in the case of elementary, they extended their reading time. That was the area of emphasis. High school, they added minutes on every course that was part of their schedule. So it really depended on the level, but it was totally instructional time.
What is the length of your academic day for your students? How long are your kids in school?
6 hours and 15 minutes.
Manatee County?
We're 20 minutes less than they are. And we're reminded of that a lot.
6 hours.
6 hours, right. We did.
Thank you.
5 minutes? It used to be
How
20
long is
minutes.
your day?
5.5. Charlotte County, actually our elementary kids go to school a half hour less than our secondary kids. Digging way back, like 30 years, it was a decision to do that so teachers had planning time. It was before the days of elementary PE, art, music, et cetera. Well, now they have that. They lost part of it. It's being returned. So we're looking at adding that half hour back next year.
Is there anyone else on this topic, or are we ready to move on? Okay. Next is Manatee County and our healthcare costs and benefits. Did you want to discuss this one? Go ahead.
Thank you. I've been superintendent now for about 18 months, and one of our priorities for the last year has been to develop a new healthcare program for our employees in our district. Been giving and working with our health insurance committee. It's a composite of our union representation and district leadership, and they have been meeting regularly, specifically around this initiative to bring forward to the board here in the near future, and with a target before our open enrollment of a new healthcare initiative that is focused and built in around transparency, wellness, or I think we say human well-being is what I think it's called now, and a healthcare package that will enable us as a school district to manage our rising premium costs in outlying years and minimize the impact on our employees and absorbing any costs around that. Given our current healthcare program that we have now in place, we're anticipating significant cost increases in our next few years. And so this initiative is aligned for us to manage around that. So right now, we're looking at different components to that. Who's going to provide a pharmaceutical? Who's going to provide the transparency component of that? Our board had a presentation from a company named Compass, who focuses on transparency. You're probably aware of it. And we're looking at different vendors. We did, I think, an RFI for our pharmaceuticals, and I know we're going through that process right now. And so I'm real excited about bringing back to the board here, hopefully within the next month, as we bring this together, a presentation and a proposal for the board to move forward with for the upcoming open enrollment implementation in January. So I'm going to ask Dawn, who's on the Health Insurance Committee, to elaborate a little bit more on anything I didn't cover.
Well, you did a good job, as usual, covering most everything that I would have said. But for us, the Health Insurance Committee is a critical part of our collaboration with our staff, because it does represent multiple stakeholder groups, and they know that they are the ones developing the proposal that will come before the board for final discussion and adoption. So as we're working through that process, part of it is what is the best health plan for all employees. So you have your support personnel represented who they're looking for something different from a health plan than your teachers may be. And so that's really important to be able to have those variances in perspective. This year, we budgeted about 20% for our health care cost increases. And out of that 20%, 10% of it is designed to build up our fund reserve, since we are self-insured. And we're looking at the other 10% to cover the cost of insurance increases. Since we're still in the process of designing the plan, then we're not sure what the exact cost will be yet. But then the negotiations will allow us to determine what portion of that would be paid by the employee and what portion would be paid for by the district. And so those are some of the things we're working through right now.
Who would like to go next? Yeah, I don't know if you're both self-insured, Charlotte. We'll pass to you guys.
All of you have a sheet that is double-sided. It says 2014 medical benefit summary. In 2010, as you will well recall, for those of you that were on the board or superintendents, we were facing the cliff. It hadn't arrived yet, but we knew it was coming. We were facing insurance increases of anywhere between 21 to 28% per year. It was out of control, and it was killing us. So we sat with our Employee Benefits Council, which represents a cross-section of all of our employee groups, and went to work on making some really tough decisions. And what you have in front of you is the plan that we came up with that year. We removed our, what was called a first dollar plan, where we basically paid for almost everything for our employees, to a high deductible PPO plan as the preferred plan or the best plan, and then 2 HSA account options for our employees. We also decided that we would require every employee to pay $50 per paycheck into their insurance. At the same time, we created a clinic run by HealthStat. We started in January of 2010. We had it up and running by March, and it was running full-blown by the following fall. We created a wellness incentive. Well, let me just back up real quickly. We required in the spring of 2010 that every single employee go through a health screening. Based on that health screening, they were then sent from the clinic a notice as to how many visits they needed to have in that clinic per year. So our healthy employees were required to ensure that they had at least an annual checkup. Our not quite as healthy folks were required to have semi-annual checkup, And our folks with chronic or acute conditions were required to have quarterly checks. If they did that, we paid them back the $50 a month they were paying into their insurance account. So they saved $600 if they were compliant with our plan. The other thing we did is we went from being insured by Aetna to a self-insurance plan, which we run through Willis. Our insurance company is United Healthcare. Willis manages our plan. And finally, we began an employee wellness plan with a coordinator paid for by our insurance company. We put those pieces into place during the year of 2010. And the plan that you see in front of you, including the back page where it tells you what our premiums are, is exactly the same as it was in 2010. And in 2015, we do not expect to have to raise our premiums again. So we will, by January of next year, have gone 5 years without any increase in our insurance costs. And I believe it's because of the package that we put together with the clinic, the incentive, the kinds of plans we have, the wellness program, and the follow-ups that we have. So you know what the finances have been like the last 5 years. To have no insurance increases has really, really helped us a lot.
Yes, Mr. Kovach.
One for Charlotte. You carry a catastrophic policy?
Yes.
And what's the
As far as the umbrella, the reinsurance begins at $250,000.
Okay. And then for Manatee County, I sense from what you said that you're in the process of becoming self-insured?
No, we haven't.
You
Go
are
ahead, Mr.
self-insured.
Hall.
No, we are currently self-insured and have been for several years. What the biggest change for us is moving to a tiered model, very similar to what Charlotte shared with us, in that in the past it's been about more traditional types of plans, and now we're looking at an escalation in benefits so that based on your wellness activities, then how you interact with that plan, bronze, silver, and gold, will differ based on your wellness activities and how that impacts your premium as well.
I would say that since we met way down south, last year or something, that Sarasota County's been looking really hard at becoming self-insured, so I thought it was good information.
And I can't tell you how much money is saved. It's hard to calculate because all of these are variables, but we believe that our clinic has saved us millions of dollars. Every time somebody goes to the clinic, instead of going to their general practitioner, or worse yet, to an emergency room, we save. It costs us less to do that. So their clinic visits are free, their lab work is free, and a lot of their basic prescriptions are free, all run through the clinic. So that's one busy place for us.
But just the fact that you've had I understand being self-insured premiums are kind of a little different animal, but just to have no increases in, you said 5 years?
5 years.
I mean, what have our increases been in 5 years? Probably 50%?
Yeah, we were, at our best, we were at 17%, and it was 20, 21, 19, 28. They were just skyrocketing.
Good information. I really appreciate your
so it's made a huge difference.
Could you share with us, Mr. Renegard, the total number of employees that you have covered and the total number that are in the plan?
We have 2,100 employees. We completely insure about 1,700 of those, and those are the people that are in this plan. And they can opt to have either family or spouses. They have to pay additional premiums, obviously, for them, but they also have clinic benefits as well.
I know in Manatee County we have about 5,000, but the total heads covered with spouses and family is about 10,000. So we're covering, and then we also have logistically our county, the way it's laid out. We have 3 hospitals, over 400 physicians, So it's a lot more complex when you start adding the locations where everybody lives and trying to work that out. And then bringing in a competing health stat company, what that does to the whole apple cart too. So there's a lot of different stresses for Manatee County to put that together.
We had some pushback from our medical community.
I imagine you did.
The doctors were concerned, but our clinic is run by a health practitioner, overseen by a local doctor. That became a little less threatening to them. But after a year, when they really didn't see any real serious impact, it's become a non-issue. We really have three distinct areas in Charlotte County. We have the Punta Gorda area to the south, Englewood to the east or to the west, and then Charlotte County, Port Charlotte as a whole in the center. So we created our clinic. We took a room at our tech center, converted it into a clinic and made it central. Over time, and we're on the threshold of opening a clinic in Punta Gorda, and eventually we'll open one in Englewood as need arises and as more people continue to come to the clinic. So it's going to be regionalized.
Mr. Goss?
Yeah, thanks for the explanation. It actually sounds like your geographic situation is probably more complex than us, but sounds like you found a way to make it work.
Yes.
You talked about one of the things that you implemented was the incentive plan.
Yes.
And basically, it sounds like you were able to collaboratively work with your unions to implement a plan where it's not mandatory, but if you want your money back, you will participate in the wellness plan.
Yes.
And
They were very
what percentage
supportive.
of your employees would you say do take advantage of that incentive? Do you have any ideas as to what percentage?
We have last year we had 140 people that did not take advantage of the incentive.
That did not. So
That's
about
correct.
85% of your
Yes.
people are taking advantage of, which is, it
Yeah,
has
that's
grown over the years? Or?
It has grown. There was a lot of concern at the beginning from our employees that this was going to be too much district oversight. Who was going to see this information? Well, they're protected by HIPAA. And the clinic, combined with being self-insurance, raised their concern that were the finance people going to sit down there and take a look and see who is costing them money, and obviously that didn't happen. So while there was reticence at the beginning, word of mouth got out, how good it was, the kind of care they get. There's no waiting. They have a 20-minute block with the health practitioner or the nurse practitioner, and that if you walk in the door with a cold, the nurse practitioner will deal with that, but at the same time does a complete wellness check on you while you're there. So every time you're there, you're getting a wellness check, regardless of why you're there.
And your fund reserve for the health plan?
Maximum.
5 years, no increases. How you've been able to also maintain?
And we've maintained the maximum level of funding, and we invested $2 million on the front end to get this going. And last year we had enough accumulated in our reserve above the maximum. We were able to reimburse ourselves as a district off of the top of that.
Great.
So yeah, it's worked really, really well.
Yeah, I just had another follow-up question. On your clinics, do you dispense drugs there?
Yes.
Okay, so
limited number.
And if your employees use the clinic, do they pay a copay?
No. Every visit's free.
Okay.
If I can, well.
1 second. Mr. Swift?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of things. Years ago, right before I started on the school board, Charlotte County had been self-insured, and they underfunded their plan one year, and it was a $2 or $3 million hit, and 20 years ago that was a huge hit. And so they went to not being self-insured for a number of years. The key to self-insurance is adequately funding the plan so that you take out some of these dynamics. We were looking at, when we made this change, a 26% increase. One of our estimates shows that over the 5 years, if you take what we've actually spent and what the projected increases would have been over that period of time, we have saved a total of $46 million or in cost avoidance and actual savings. We actually, in our first year, we funded it not at the maximum level, but at the expected claims level, and we did not meet that level. So we accumulated a significant reserve the very first year, and we've built it every year. Another advantage that a number of school districts, we have not done this yet, but I think it's something that we need to be looking at. Several of the other school districts that have plans similar to ours and have clinics process their workers' comp claims through their clinics, and that saves them an additional amount of money. And I was talking to a gentleman at the Florida School Board Insurance Trust, and they had a discussion this week with the state, and if you follow the right procedures, you don't have to report that workers' comp claim until it's transferred from the clinic to an outside doctor. So it saves you some on your mod rate, and it also can save you additional money in your workers' comp program. So some of the districts, it was discussed initially, but as Dr. Whitaker said, there was a little bit of pushback about, what's Big Brother doing here? And so we didn't go into it in the initial rollout. The clinic is so widely supported and believed in by our employees that now I don't think that would be an issue, but it's a negotiation issue, and we would have to go through that. But the other districts that have done it have seen an additional savings above and beyond what they got through their normal health plan.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I'd like to know from both of the districts, what is your employee smoking policy? And do you have a total smoke-free campus, or do you have designated employee smoking areas?
I believe all the counties here are tracked around, I think, 14 components, and we have incorporated 11 of those 14 components of around the smoking and the use of tobacco products.
I think it's 11 of 12.
I know we've banned it from our campuses, and they have designated areas kind of beyond the campuses, but I don't recall the specifics of our policy, but we just revised it a year ago.
We just changed our enforcement of our policy. We've had a policy for years that was no smoking on any school property. And then the picnic tables popped up back behind the dumpster, between the bushes and whatever was behind that. Even at the district office, we had an area that was fenced in the back, nobody could see, where people were smoking. And the unions actually were the ones that brought it up in conversation to me and our partnership council. And they said, we're getting pushback from our employees because some employees can smoke on campus and some employees can't. Are you going to enforce your policy or not? And my response was, you're right.
So you both have a complete smoke-free campus?
So as of April 1st of last year, there is absolutely no tobacco use, including vapor cigarettes, on any school property. We have big signs. We don't even want the parents smoking in their car in the parent pickup line. We've gone to that extent, not that we're dragging them out and beating them up because they're smoking, but we're really trying to enforce, and it's stopped. So now people literally have to get in their car, drive off of campus, smoke, and come back on if they're going to smoke during the day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Goss?
Understanding that. Superintendent Mills talked a little bit about some of the transparency plans that we're looking at and the Compass is sort of a concierge service. And I don't know if either of you have had any experience with that type of process, but it seems to be based on using the service by the employee, use of the service by the employee to find less expensive providers for the various referral services that they need. And I don't know if with the wellness clinic, what you apparently have done is incentivize people to use your wellness clinic. Have either of you had success in getting your employees to understand that what you spend on medical comes out of the same pot as what you spend for salaries? I mean, getting them to understand that it is one pot and that they need to take ownership in maintaining medical cost. I mean, to me, that's the big issue that we all face, is to try and make our employees understand and take ownership in that issue.
In 2010, most of our employees got it because they saw the figures, how much more we were going to have to spend the next year on insurance. And that they finally got, there was only one pot. We've had a lot of transition since then. I'm not sure we've done the best job we could have done in keeping our employees informed about the status, because right now everything's been going so well, it hasn't emerged as a need. But we still have employees that think that the finance, our CEO has a safe or a vault somewhere in his office that he has several $1 million stashed away. So it's hard to communicate that it is. There's only one source of money, and we have to decide how we're going to use it. The people on our Employee Benefits Council get it. They understand it because they have to deal with it. I'm not sure how well that message has continued to go out over the last 4 or 5 years.
I think it's certainly something we've been struggling with. But as the costs, and we are not self-insured, although we've had, I formed with Mitzi's leadership a task force this past year involving union leadership to begin the exploration of becoming self-insured and perhaps implementing some redesign of our programs, plans that might include clinics or some version of that. So they met over last year, decided this wasn't the bargaining time to try to make that change. It's also, as you have to make that upfront investment, so we have to plan for that, but I think that will become very much a conversation for our school district in the coming year. Our incentive programs that we have tried to implement, although somewhat successful, I think we're struggling with that message. However, there is much more willingness now with union leadership to have conversations that 3 or 4 years ago would have been more difficult of really change. We've made modifications of our plan, and there's really, I think everyone's ready to look and explore what are ways that we can drive down these costs because they're eating away those dollars that could become part of salaries.
Is there anything else on this topic? Mr. Hall?
Yes, I had a question for the Charlotte County team. Specifically, when you say there have been no cost increases in 5 years, are we talking about the actual cost of insurance or the cost that you pass on or not to your employees?
There has been no increase in our premiums. We have had modest, less than 1% increases that we've been able to absorb through our self-insurance plan, because they've been so small. So over the last 5 years, maybe a total of 2% increase in real costs over that period of time. You're welcome.
Yeah, I know none of us brought our census data of how many people are in the plan, but the average age of because that tends to say a lot too, and if you've had a big turnover in your workforce is a little bit on the median side, we find in ours it's less than 5% of the people are using the greatest percentage of the resources in the plan. Is that similar to what you're finding?
Similar. If you asked our average age, I'd just say old, because we're Charlotte County. And
Florida
have
is
lost-
God's waiting room.
We have lost. We've been dethroned as the oldest county in the United States. I believe that now goes to Lake County with the villages.
Good.
So we are now the second oldest county in the United States. Our workforce, I would say our workforce is significantly younger now than it was 5 years ago. We've seen quite a few
Okay.
retirements.
I think that's a trend that
And-
we're starting to see as well. So.
And we're hiring younger. so
Healthier
that's-
people, are they going?
So that's a good thing.
Any other questions at this time? All right, we're going to take one more topic, and then we'll take a short break. And the next is Sarasota County. And Lori, would you like to take the lead, or Jane? And I have to say, too, it's kind of interesting to sit here with Jane, because back in 2001, she and I were put together in a room for people that were, I was the community volunteer for sales tax to do a capital campaign, and Jane was my counterpart in Sarasota. So we would have these meetings about what we were doing in the community, and it's interesting that we're now sitting here and doing these here. So it's good to see you, Jane.
All these many years later.
It is.
But who's counting? Athletics are important to us all, and a lot of districts are looking at pay to play, and that's one issue that we're not talking about today. But basically, sometimes we have, certain schools within a district that are considered excellent in, let's say, football or volleyball or something. And other people from other schools academically want to transfer choice into that school. And we've been talking about this for a while, and we had a little situation earlier this year in one of our schools. And I just wondered what policy or what Charlotte and Manatee, what you were doing. Do you have some explicit ideas on this topic?
All right, we'll have Dr. Green go first for Manatee County.
Well, we are a school, our entire district is a school district of choice. I think our policy is very similar to everyone, that, it is based on the amount of space at that school. And once that space limit has been met, then that school is closed for choice. Danny Lundeen, who is our supervisor of student assignments, monitors that information very closely. We meet with our athletic directors monthly, and we have conversation about the choice policy, and so far we are working very well together in the sandbox, ensuring that, a student isn't trying to choice at a certain time of the year. So our choice happens starts in January, and we start to close that off at the beginning of August, because that's when football practice starts. So that we can ensure that students who they can choose whichever high school they desire to go in that time period until the school is considered filled. In addition, school students that attend charter and they don't have that program at their school, they may choice that athletic activity at their base high school where they would have attended if they were attending a traditional school. As well as our students who are in private school, they can also choice into an athletic activity of what would have been their base high school or base middle school.
Dr. Whitaker?
Yeah.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you have policy or not, because it's the law and something we need to follow. I just wanted to be real clear.
Yes.
That you
Yes.
didn't, that wasn't your specific.
No,
but
that wasn't our
rather
specific, we
statewide.
follow the law. That's what we
As
do.
we.
The only thing that
I don't want to add.
are the school choice policy.
Yes, and our school choice, again, they can choice to any high school during the time period of January to the end of July. And that, We do not monitor what high school a student chooses to attend, as long as that school has the space, or if they are applying for a particular magnet and they meet the criteria, then they can choice into that. But yes, we follow the law.
And we're pretty much the same. We follow the law, but we do, when we have an athlete that transfers, the two athletic directors have a conversation every time that occurs, just to make sure there's no recruitment going on one school to the other. So one AD call the other AD and say, is there anything we need to know, about this student? Other than that, it really is pretty much open. I don't know where all of this is going eventually in Florida, but it's fodder for a lot of recruitment if they're really good at doing it, under the surface. Where we have our biggest problems are with Sarasota and DeSoto and kids back and forth between counties. So what I've given to you is our out-of-county student reassignment application, in which in the middle of the form, it says, if you have a high school student is requesting assignment in Charlotte County and your student is interested in participating in interscholastic athletics, please check one of the following boxes. Yes or no. If you checked yes to your child's interest in participating, you must meet with a high school athletic director of your school of choice before your assignment will be considered. We then call, in Sarasota, Steve Cantees. April calls Steve and says, what do we need to know about this particular student? And we had one this year that was a little bit touchy back and forth. And so we're really, and unless Sarasota gives us a green light on that particular student, then the student's not eligible if they come into our high school until they've served a year. We do the same thing with DeSoto County, back and forth. So it's we have more issues with people coming from outside in than we do internally.
We made one change this year. Our athletic directors cannot be coaches. Therefore, they're not being tied to any particular sport. So all of our athletic directors do that full-time.
I want to say we really appreciate the cooperation that we've received from Charlotte County. I think it works great. We're all on the same page, trying to make sure that there isn't a recruitment issue in terms of that reassignment. So that partnership's been great.
Yes, Mr. Swift.
I happen to serve as the vice chairman of the General Assembly of the Florida High School Athletic Association, and this issue is one of the biggest topics every year at the assembly meeting in the changing of the bylaws and policies of the Athletic Association, and it is a much bigger problem in other parts of the state than I think that it is here, but it's something that is potentially extremely divisive, and it's going to require all of us to monitor constantly so that we don't get ourselves in trouble. I mean, we were, as school board members and school districts, we were facing a situation last year all over an athletic issue in Lakeland, and to take the investigatory power away from the Athletic Association and give it to DOE, which would have meant situations would have taken years to resolve rather than months. And so we've got to make sure we keep our house in order.
Thank you all. And I would just like to say there is water and cups in the back of the room, and I'd like to thank Tommy and Jamie Klauber for hosting us today, and they have donated the use of this room, and all of the setup and charges have been waived. So thank you to Tommy and Jamie. And we will recess for about 10 minutes. Thank you. I have a little? I don't have a gavel. I don't have a gavel. Good afternoon. If you all wouldn't mind, we'd like to get ready to begin our next section. And we'll have 3 more topics. And then if you would remain afterwards for some photographs of our county groups. Thank you. Of our, wow.
Who did that?
Yeah, who did that? I don't know. I could use you on Tuesdays, 2 Tuesdays a month. Anyway, if you would all remain after our meeting at 5, we would like to do some group photos of our counties and all of us together. And our next topic is Charlotte County for Professional Development, specifically targeting our new standards. Dr. Whitaker, would you like to lead us? Or?
I'm going to talk for just about 10 seconds while Mr. Bradley finishes eating his
Good.
whatever he's eating.
My daughter picked all of the
Sure it's a
candy,
pleasure
so
to be here.
you got my daughter's favorites. So,
I'm sure like both Sarasota and Manatee, Charlotte is struggling to arrive on time with many of the mandates that we've had from Florida Department of Education, including making sure that our teachers are prepared to teach the new Florida standards. And so we are currently in process of providing professional development to our teachers, as I'm sure is happening in other districts. And we just wanted to hear some of the ideas of what is happening in other districts. Currently, we have, over the last few years, sent teams from our schools to the Florida Department of Education summer workshops and sessions. We do feel that they were minimally beneficial. And Dave?
Nicely stated.
Mr. Bradley, are you in an elected position?
No, I'm not.
Because you did that
No, I'm
very
not.
well.
Thank you. And of course, as we have worked over the last year with, of course, the changes that are going on at the state level in, are they Common Core standards or Florida standards, we have struggled to stay on top of that. We do currently have professional development going on in our district. We have trained our leads in the CMAP tool that the state provides and have found that to be extremely effective and are currently training our teachers with that. We have also brought in from Learning Sciences. We've also brought in people from that group to help us with the Marzano strategies and connecting those with the new Florida standards. And we have ongoing professional development tools that are provided electronically. So we have the PD 360 tool and the Cengage library that we use to help our teachers. Other than that, we have our own local professional development that's provided through our curriculum and instruction specialists, our lead teachers at our schools, team leaders in our secondary schools, and a variety of other things that are going on to help our teachers get prepared. So we just wanted to hear again what is going on in other districts that we might be able to all learn from and be able to possibly even network with each other and help each other out.
All right. All right, we'll have Dr. Gringo, and then we'll go over to Sarasota.
Well, I would say we're still doing some similar things. We also have lead teachers. We have teachers from every single school that serve as the liaison between the PD that they receive, and then they go back and they are the support to our administrators. We train our principals and APs. They are the trainers, and the lead teacher provides that support for them as they provide the training on what we call Professional Learning Wednesdays. We started last year training all of our schools on the instructional shifts. So every Professional Learning Wednesday, one shift was trained, and our Our principals and APs were the trainers, and again, the lead teachers were the backup support for them. This year, the lead teachers also, after they receive training, they are also the ones who help develop our curriculum maps. What we are doing this year is delivering our curriculum maps 1 quarter at a time. They're also involved in building that quarterly assessment tied to that map for the month. So what we've done is we've taken our map, aligned it with our superintendent's vision of data teams, professional learning community groups, our new teacher evaluation system. We have just transitioned over to Charlotte Danielson. We've aligned that, as well as every new resource we purchased for the district. We just purchased a new K-5 Wonders textbook. So all of that is aligned in our maps. And so every Professional Learning Wednesday, when they're trained on another piece of Florida standards, there's a Charlotte Danielson piece. So here's what effective looks like, or here's what a highly effective looks like in teaching this particular unit. Part of that, one of the things I need to add is how this works is we have 3 executive directors, we have 2 elementary and 1 secondary, and each of them have 4 instructional specialists. So each specialist has 4 schools. Their whole job is to work with those 4 schools, the leadership team, the data teams, the administrators, in helping to deliver that professional development to the teachers. And the lead teachers are the eyes and ears for our curriculum group. They're the ones who come back and tell us, you know what, that unit that was on XYZ, the following things we got from our teachers worked or did not work, or our teachers still do not understand this particular standard and how to scaffold that up to a much rigorous task for students. So we kind of have a really strong infrastructure on how we collaborate together between the executive directors and the instructional division and our schools. So we've it's a circular motion of information that once they're trained, they go back to their schools and train, and then they come back to curriculum, we have that conversation. We are very open for any participation that you would like, the Charlotte would like to have with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. So Lori?
We're doing a similar type of work this summer with teams from every school. We've are using Kevin Baird, who is college and career, and he's worked nationally, and we've brought him down. We'll continue to bring him down over the year to try to help our teachers understand this redefinition of what rigor looks like. We think if you interpret the standards in a way that doesn't have sufficient complexity, you've missed the mark when you look at how they're going to be assessed. So we're really staying focused on that. We also use instructional focus guides that are online that tie into videos and CPALMs and all the other resources out there for teachers. We're trying to make the planning as easy as possible. But I think one of the challenges that we all face is some of the nitty-gritty information. For example, our teachers need to understand the test specification, what it looks like. And what we've done, because of when we didn't have that information when we really needed it to provide that type of quality training over the summer, we've had to look at Plan B and getting that information, because I strongly believe our teachers need to know what the test is going to look like now, the first day of school, so they can begin to give those integrated, appropriate experiences throughout the year, not a few weeks before the test is given to say it's going to be about test prep. So I've told all of our district staff that work in this area that they have to become experts in making little video clips. We use Camtasia, and that has to be a part of professional development. It's when you need it, clips you can see whenever you need that might talk about this is what the writing assessment is going to look like. This is what some of the test specifications are by grade level, very specific information. So we're doing more and more using Safari Live. Today, you have all the same challenges. We have to get all these kindergarten teachers understanding the change in fare and the new that we just got trained in Monday that has to be done in 30 days of the new work sampling system that is out there. So we have invited at least one representative teacher from every school in kindergarten, but we've done it on Safari Live, and it's archived, so any teacher that's missed it, they can watch it. We've got little video clips, so we'll walk them through it. So because we don't have the latitude of time for some of this very nitty-gritty kind of information that they need right away, we're using those types of processes to get a lot of information quickly so it doesn't become the burden of one teacher at that site trying to disseminate, or the principal or assistant principal. We're trying to support them. My biggest concern is the limited resources we have that are truly aligned with the expectations in how they are going to be assessed. When you look at that writing, I mean, basically, we are relearning how to teach writing because of the way it's now going to be assessed. We're teaching argumentative writing to 6th graders. I don't have resources right now that I feel are appropriate for teachers, because that's not something you learn in a few weeks. That needs to be appropriately integrated throughout the year. So it's a frustrating time for everyone in the amount of change, and that measure is going to be here, ready or not, come March. And I think it'll be a very challenging time. Our focus is to try to de-escalate anxiety and really focus and prioritize what is going to be where we start. We're starting on writing, making sure that they know this new format and how you teach it differently. We're looking at editing, because every single test has between 5 and 6 points on editing, and that also is something that could be appropriately integrated in instruction at the appropriate grade levels. And then we're helping them understand this whole new format of hot text. If you've looked at the actual test, you can see this a very different way of using text evidence to support during the assessment. So we're trying to focus, here's some key areas we can help our schools and our teachers, getting them acquainted with this new way of assessing standards they may be familiar with, but they're not familiar with this different way of assessing them.
One of the things we've picked up on is our lead teachers and our support teachers work with teachers, and we unpack these standards. The teachers read the new standards and they say, oh, well, I know what that means. And it's killing us because they don't want to stick to it. They just want, okay, well, what's the next one? Oh, I know what that means too. We've always done that. No, read the verbs that are in here of what the student is required to do. Look at the bulleted statements that are under, and then go to the new item specifications. That's really what we're seeing is blowing them away, is when they look at the item specs, or we're having our teachers take their grade level sample test, just so they can experience. And that's finally getting everybody's attention. What are you doing about keyboarding skills? We're really concerned.
I'll let Mr. Mills share what the purchase we just made, and I can then follow up how we're applying that purchase.
We're talking about our major purchase
Yes,
of
sir.
our computers. We purchased 6,200 Lenovo computers. There are notebooks and
Touchscreen?
pardon me?
Are they touch?
Yes. And I think they are, aren't they?
Yes, they can turn into a
Turns around and it
tablet.
goes into a notebook from the top.
Yeah.
And we purchased carts as well, so that we have mobile labs in our schools, obviously to transport around. And so this is part of our alignment of our new strategic plan and the implementation of technology in the classroom and learning process. And so I'm going to allow Diana to talk about the implementation and utilization of that around the academic component.
We ensured that every school had enough of we call them twists, to ensure that 5th grade, middle school, and high school students are accessing keyboarding every single day. In part of our presentation, there are 3 things we want teachers to do every single day. Daily reading of grade level text with teacher support. daily writing in response to reading and learning. And for 5th grade, that's daily typing in response. So we have created sort of, I don't want to call them lessons, but templates. So if they are reading text, 3 passages, we gave them a template. Here, put your question here, and now they can type in their answer. And now that we have moved to Office 360, the students can email their assignment to their teacher. Now, that will not be happening on day one. That will be a process that we are working with the teachers, but it's very scary to know that a 5th grader is going to have to type a 5-paragraph essay. And
Yes, it is.
they didn't tell us how long they were going to get them to type that 5-paragraph essay. So all of our middle schools have enough carts and twists that students in language arts can access using online curriculum. Our high schools, they are using a program called Right to Learn. Right to Learn is an instructional summarization, constantly using their own text, and then they go in and teachers can add questions, or they can use the questions already in the system, and students are constantly being able to use keyboarding. We're also doing a lot with a product called Laboratory 2.0. It reminds me of the old SRA kit, but aligned to the Florida standards in that students can manipulate text. So when we looked at the sample items, just like we saw where they had to pick the right word, well, in that program, they do the same thing. They give them text, and it's over 70% of it is expository text, and students can manipulate their answers. They can move information, and so our grades 1 through 5 we have the expectation that's part of their language arts rotation. So we are aligning our resources with the things that we want teachers to have students experience every day, so that in March, it won't be as difficult to type a 5-paragraph essay.
If I could add a little bit more to that. As I mentioned, we had just completed and the board approved our new district strategic plan. One of our 7 goals, priorities, was the implementation of technology. It's part of our 5 principles of education performance management, and the 5th principle being how you're leveraging technology, as Diana said, in greater outcomes and exponential gains in instruction through the use of technology, specifically strategic use of it. So we're really excited about that, and the purchase of these computers is obviously a great step in that direction, plus the Microsoft 365 implementation. So we're really focusing and aligning that component to our strategic plan. And we got a really wonderful deal on these computers. I think we purchased them for $425 per computer, and they retail usually for what, $1,200 to $1,400. So it was a wonderful opportunity. It was kind of at the moment, opportunity was presented to our chief information officer, and we kind of jumped on it. And the board was wonderful about support of it and understanding it and aligning it to our strategic plan and supporting such a short notice purchase.
Question, kind of stepping back more towards the Common Core standards and everything that we're all dealing with. And it seems oftentimes that there's a lot of, confusion between the standards and the curriculum, and everything I'm hearing is that the standards are forcing us to rethink the way that you teach in the classroom. The rub I sometimes hear is, concern that the freedom to teach the standard or the curriculum in a individual way is lost, and how are you all trying to bridge that gap, or are you trying to bridge that gap?
Did you want to go back? Because I think you were going to say something too about the...
I really don't have a lot to add on the keyboarding,
Okay.
except we're trying to avoid spending a lot of instructional time teaching strictly keyboarding.
Yeah.
And there's lots of software out there that does that. But look at more the use, much like Manatee County is, and aligning good resources that might integrate the practice of keyboarding as you're teaching the different types of writing or whatever. So we're doing a similar type of plan. I think for our teachers, they feel somewhat frustrated in terms of their understanding the expectations and what they're wanting our students to know and be able to do. And they're grappling with finding the right resources, creating the types of the environment that will really nurture this very high level of thinking, and beginning to change how they teach. And that's a hard thing to do. It's hard. I told the teachers, you've gone into this profession somewhat because you love to be the hero and tell students what they need to know and be able to save them when they struggle. And we've got to have our teachers step back and allow that struggle and that so they can begin to really do that deep thinking. And so that's a challenge for us. I don't feel like they think, oh, I can no longer teach that great unit. Those days have been gone for a while. But they are challenged by what they feel is a very different way of presenting information, modeling thinking, and the expectations, and how does that translate, and how do I use all these incredible number of resources? We're almost have more resources than they know what to do with, and we're trying to help with that whole planning process. So it's a challenging time, but I don't feel teachers are saying, are thinking, oh, these standards are forcing me to give up everything that I loved about teaching, but they are challenged by a very different expectation.
We've just rolled out through our learning division a basic framework that pulls together the standards, the assessments, the instructional materials, all of that, so that there's a sort of a visual picture of how this all fits together. And literally 2 days ago, met with our unions, our district partnership and performance councils, to roll out some of the specificity of the plan, to put meat on the plan. But for the first time, we are requiring our teachers not only to teach the standards, because we found out sort of by default that some of them were passively, aggressively resisting that and still teaching the old stuff, but that they're required to teach the standards, but they're also required to use our basal text, especially for the next year or two, while they really learn what's involved with the standards and what it means, because we're comfortable that our reading materials and our math materials help the teachers move in that direction and get the depth of knowledge that they need, the high level of understanding, the kind of mental processing that's necessary in math, the conceptual understanding of mathematics, not just skills and processes. And we're anticipating a little bit of pushback, but what we're also hearing is, thank you for telling us, what is it you want us to do, and making it clear and concise with the expectations. So the message is really, you need to stick for now until you have mastery of all of this with the basal text, and you can supplement it to your heart's content. We encourage you to do that, but you can't supplant it. You can't just say, okay, well, I'm not going to use that material, I'm going to use my own, because they don't know what they don't know right now. And with all good intentions, they want to go back to the way they used to teach this with these materials in this unit. And what we're saying is, you've got to stick to this. Let's focus on this. Let's get the mastery. 2 years from now, when you really have an understanding of what the standards really are, and you're comfortable with that, and you're showing results with that, then we may back off a little bit more. But we realized we were too hands off the last few years.
I have a question. Lori, at one time Sarasota had developed a collaborative planning model as well. Do you still use your collaborative planning process?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
It's a part of the bargaining agreement. It's done weekly.
I'd just like to dovetail what Lori said. You know, we are asking our teachers to do a major shift in how we teach, going to higher order thinking skills, constructivist learning techniques, cognitive engagement, interactive teaching. This is a major paradigm shift, and then you're embedding the new standards into your maps and pacing and rigor, unpacking those standards, knowing those standards. So I think I would like to ask Diana if she would comment about how our teachers are kind of dealing with that whole different change of teaching.
Slowly. No, we've had some real success with our K through 2, because K through 2, they started this process 2 years ago. So I think especially at the elementary level, 3 through 5, they knew it was coming, so they were more prepared. My major concern would be our middle school teachers, because they've been somewhat kind of at abeyance, sort of, because the 3 through 5 were listening to the K through 2. And so through the lead teacher process, we definitely have learned we have more work to do. As we develop the maps and we sent out the first draft of the maps, I got interesting emails back, you know, wanting to know, we never taught this. What are you talking about? Where am I supposed to find that? And so we quickly came back and said, calm down, the resource tied to the resource. And we're doing the same thing, that you all chose this Basel. We're all committed to using Connections at the middle school level for language arts. And so by the maps coming out early, teachers having an opportunity to look at the information, and now that their resources are there, the moment that they came back yesterday, they had training yesterday afternoon. We are very fortunate that Wonders, McGraw-Hill, is sending us 3 coaches from the company to stay with us the entire school year. They will coach. They each have 11 schools, and they will continue to be in those classrooms supporting the teachers on implementing the core resource that we have purchased. And so we're going to do the same thing with our middle school language arts teachers, providing that coaching support for them. And we've kind of put it in a tiered system. The first 9 weeks, the only thing we want you to focus on is the textbook. Second 9 weeks, we're going to pull out these resources that we know you all have, and now we're going to focus on these. And then each, to try not to overwhelm them with, as you said, they have so many resources. Let's focus, let's get good at this, then let's move to this. And so the instructional specialists, that's part of their job, to be out there helping to support them. So if in the second 9 weeks we're focused on using small group materials and their rotations, we will have face-to-face trainings. The company, they know what our focus is, so that's what they'll start training the teachers and providing support for them. So we think the fact, as Mr. Mills said, the maps are their guide, and we're now, the district is providing that support, standing beside them. As well as we talked about our teacher evaluation system. We've tried to align it to everything. And so our mantra is, we are effective. And that's what we're focused on in helping them accomplish this year.
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
I see that, obviously, I know this is a huge overhaul and a large change, and I've spoken with teachers, and I see that anxiety. But I commonly ask the question, what are you guys, or what are we doing to communicate with the families to help them be aware of the changes and the expectations of the students as far as a communication level?
All of our principals have information that is parent-friendly to share with their families. And we just, at the last board meeting, talked about instructional materials and how we are sharing how their textbook is online. And so the families know that you can access what your child is learning every day online. And so each school has their information on how to share that information with their families. And one of the great things about our board meetings is we have an instructional update. And so at that time, we also try to keep our families informed. Last night, we talked about all the new resources that were purchased this year and what was the process of choosing those, how we have teachers from every school choosing our instructional materials and what will be new out in the schools. So I think we get it also from newsletters. Again, the schools having the information, we supply them the information, and then they make sure it's delivered to their families. Our Title I schools this year will be required to have parent nights to also introduce them into the new resources, as well as further explanation of the Florida standards. And so so far, I feel like we've done a good job of getting that information out to our families and them knowing what to expect this upcoming school year.
We actually began last year with district personnel going out to school meetings for our SACs and doing presentations on the standards, at that time known as Common Core standards, and pretty much quite a few of the same things that were mentioned by Dr. Green, that our schools are providing information through newsletters. They're going to hold family nights throughout the year, especially in our Title I schools. We have an ambition also to make sure that our principals actually use those practice tests with our parents so that they get a sense of what their students are going to need to be able to do for the assessment. So various other things that go with that.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Is there any requirement, I don't know if it was Chuck or Doug who said that you want the teachers to take the grade level assessments. Is there any expectation or requirement that at some point those teachers successfully pass those tests?
Don't you think the
No,
legislature?
I'm kind of serious.
Do you think the legislature should pass the test before?
Yeah, they should, true.
Well, at this time, of course, we're only using the sample tests, but I talked with the principal this morning, and she did this activity already with her staff yesterday, and she said that the staff wanted to keep working on the test until they got all of the answers right, because it meant that much to them, that they know what their students need to be able to do.
It's a little bit scary. I was at the Model Schools Conference this year in Orlando with Bill Daggett, and one of the presenters had a session on the core and gave us, about 80 educators sitting in the room, a 6th grade math problem to do regarding time, distance, travel, how much space between cars, how many feet would you need to be based on this and that, and gave us 2 minutes to solve the problem. Of course, we had our iPhones with us, so we could look up how many feet there are in a mile, because many of us didn't remember, et cetera, et cetera. Long story short, only 10% of the audience got the answer right, given 2 minutes to solve a 6th grade math problem.
Mr. Kovach.
Well, this is kind of more of an observation, because we've gone through several areas that we've talked about today, and kind of sounds to me like, I mean, we spend about $750 million a year to do what we do. You guys spend about the same. You guys spend a lot of money. Doesn't sound to me like our districts talk very much. I know when I was in air conditioning, I couldn't go ask my competitors when we had issues, how did they deal with it? But doesn't sound to me, and please don't take this as a criticism, but it doesn't sound to me like our staffs are talking very much, and everybody seems to be kind of reinventing the wheel, and it seems like a shame we have to get together once a year with boards to try to figure out what everybody's doing. Why are we talking to each other? Why are our senior staff not talking to your senior staff, and vice versa? And why is everybody operating in a silo?
I think we all get so busy, so consumed by our own jobs. I think part of it's just being human. You have families that get together, they eat dinner, but they don't really talk to each other about anything significant. And I know when I get together, the superintendents get together 4 times a year. And I sit with different groups. Sometimes I'm with Lori, sometimes I'm with other folks. And we talk, in those meetings, we talk back and forth. What are you doing about this? What are you doing about that? You know, oh my word, I forgot about that. You know, I need to start addressing it. So, you know, we talk on a regular basis. I think it's more difficult for people in Chuck's position, assistant superintendents and directors, to have those kinds of conversations. I think the way to get over that is to just simply make a determination that we're going to meet twice a year or 3 times a year. Here's the dates, put them on your calendars and do it. Because there's great value in getting in a room together.
You know,
When I talk about what we spend, we're spending a tremendous amount of money, but everybody's, you guys are facing the same thing. When we're talking about Common Core and Florida standards and stuff, we're all facing the exact same, it's the exact same thing that we're doing it, but it seems like everybody's trying to come up with their own solutions to the same problems. It just seems, I know sometimes we get a little parochial and we don't want to talk to, our neighbors and stuff, but, quite honestly, it just doesn't make sense to me sometimes. And like I said, please don't take it as a criticism. It's just an observation. I just, even when I was in air conditioning, we still had trade associations where we'd sit down and talk, and you'd kind of get some information. They're obviously not going to tell you what's working, but the opposite you'd seem to be like in government. They'd tell you what was working, and they'd want we would want Manatee to be just as successful as we are, and vice versa. But I don't think we always have that same attitude.
If I could, I think that's a really great recommendation. I think coming to these meetings collaboratively, 3 county school districts, how do we create synergies out of this? And so my previous position as CEO up in Minneapolis Public Schools, we had those kinds of meetings 3 times a year. The CFOs would come together. We had about 12 or 13 districts up there that would meet regularly 3 times a year. Our chief academic officer, our operations and business. So we had those scheduled meetings 3 times during a year to create those synergies, share best practices, exchange of ideas, and maybe that's an action item that could come out of today's meeting or give some thought around. Do we want to formalize something like that to encourage that kind of sharing?
Thank you. I just want to follow up because I'm keeping notes in the time on all this, but are we all members of FSBA for school boards? Because one of the tools that we have is coordinating our workshop and having it be with our tri-county. So we could accomplish 2 goals at the same time. So that might be a venue that we can use, because instead of us going there and meeting, we could probably get this group. That would be one thing that we do, because I don't know about your calendars, but all of us are pretty stressed. The other thing that we could do is by sharing the information that we just shared today, and finding a way to get our topics and share our information and updates. So I'll try to work on that too. Mr. Bradley.
I just wanted to respond to your comment that there are state forums that we do gather in, Florida Organization of Instructional Leaders, there are many others. The concern I have is that over the years, especially the FOIL meetings back in the day were a great opportunity to exchange information around what was happening in other districts. Over the years, they have turned into a meeting with the Department of Education, and it's pretty one-way communication for 2 days that feel like about 2 weeks. So it is very intense, and there is not the opportunity at those state meetings for the sharing that used to happen, and that's where we feel the need.
Lori remembers the day when we would have a 2-day meeting. The DOE would have a morning, and we would spend the other day and a half sharing ideas, best practices. But it's sort of been taken over. I haven't been there in recent years, but Chuck tells me it's now sort of the DOE show. And maybe there's a way to rein in. FOIL is their own organization. They can limit the DOE and say, you have 4 hours on Friday morning. Although the mandates have become so prevalent, it takes them so long to go through all their mandates. That's really the problem.
But I'm not talking about statewide or regionally. I'm just talking about somebody from our district calling somebody in your district or vice versa and say, we're having a problem with this. What are you guys doing about it? We have to come here and talk about it to see what's going on. So again, just an
that does
observation.
occur. That does occur. We have, again, the superintendents meet quarterly in Charlotte, Lee, Collier, Glades, and Henry. We meet 4 times a year as superintendents with our local college presidents. So we have that forum where we share. And there are times, I have a couple of superintendents, I simply pick up the phone and call and say, what are you doing with this? How are you doing that? I just sent a request to FADS today, the Superintendent Association, saying, I've got a question about X. Will you survey the rest of the superintendents for me? And next week, I'll get a survey result back about some information. I think there's room for improvement as we push down into our curriculum directors and those folks sharing as well, and create some local, regional forums where there is that sharing of ideas.
Thank you. One of the things we tried to do today that was a little bit different was when I sent out the information to make sure we expanded to have finance and operations as well as curriculum, because board members come and go and it's by vote, and the work of education has to continue on and has to meet all of the rigor and standard, and that's a different process than a political process. So it really was interesting to watch as all of your topics came in, how well we all synchronized where our focus went, and that just showed the synergy that, yes, we are all different, but we're all having to deal with the exact same things at the same time. So I want to thank you all for that. Yes.
The finance directors also meet, and they share a lot. And they meet how many times, Mitzi? Because I don't know.
We meet twice a year, and there is a finance council that also meets in the DOE.
So that's another great way to share.
Ms.
Well,
Brown.
I
Mr. Hall.
I think one of the things as senior leaders, we have to model and express that expectation. One of the things coming in new to this state, I was faced with rebuilding a lot of areas from scratch. And so as a result, we didn't have the luxury of sitting around and waiting to figure out the answer. So my expectation of the team that I'm honored to lead was find out what other districts are doing. Go and call that director of transportation, call that director of maintenance and operations, call that CFO and find out. And so I know for our team, it was about putting that as an expectation and then modeling that for them. And so I think that that's something that's an easy step that we can all take as leaders and moving this process forward.
Thank you. Ms. Brown?
I think another step that we might want to take as leaders is, I'm hearing, from y'all, as we're hearing too, some anxiety, not as much over the new curriculum. We're getting our training, we're doing that, but the anxiety over the assessments. And we know this is the first year that, they're going to come down hard and coordinate them with teacher salaries. There's a lot of talk about holding off on doing that. And I know even Bill Gates has said hold off on these assessments for 2 years. And I know our legislators are kind of immune to listening to the FSBA and the Districts Association. I mean, they don't want to listen to all of that. But maybe if we as school board members each bring it up to our delegation, some of the problems that we have, not as an association, but as school board members, one-on-one, telling our legislators, maybe you can hold off on the high stakes of these tests that you're doing here.
Last spring, the superintendents came together, and I believe there was 57 of the 67 superintendents in the room, and agreed upon a 3-year rollout plan that we were going to press. It went to the legislature, and it was reviewed. It was actually given some serious consideration. They didn't act on it, They gave us a 1 year. Now we have our local legislators, our delegations talking about, well, maybe it needs to be 2. So my encouragement to the school board members here is to request of the delegation that they go back to the superintendent's recommendation of a 3-year transition. We gave them some real specific things that could be done over that 3-year period of time, and why it was so important to make this a 3-year transition. So our teachers really understood the new standards, felt comfortable teaching them, had adequate resources before they were going to be held accountable, or worse yet, be given performance pay over standards that they're just learning themselves. So my encouragement would be, yes, press them to take the 3-year plan that they've already seen from the Superintendent's Association.
Yeah, but each of us as local delegations, to our local delegations as school board members.
Thank you. We've sort of segued right into our next, which is a continuation of the Florida standards, the Common Core, and I sort of see this. There's the teacher component of the classroom. There's the parent component of understanding that things have changed. And then there's the community component, which ranges from a very wide gamut, and for those of us who are out in the community, and some of us are out there campaigning, and it's like, where are you on this? Are you going to vote no on this? And there's no explaining to anyone what all of this really means. So I was glad to see this come on today for a little bit of discussion, and as you can see, I like that we segued from one into the other because of what's happening on the professional component. But Dr. Green, did you want to go first on the Common Core standards for Manatee County and what we're doing?
Sure, I'll go first and repeat a lot of what I said.
Feel free to skip or amend.
I think I'll ask a question.
Sure.
I'd like to know, what is the feeling? Do your parents understand enough of the Florida standards to know what they don't know, to ask questions, and how are you dealing with that? Because in our conversation, I've already talked about all the resources we are using. We've already talked about all the training for that. But what are you doing to continue to help parents understand the minutia, like homework? It'll be different, or it's important your child has a computer, or those kinds of things.
We did basically a town hall meeting in every school last spring. I did probably half to 2/3 of them. Chuck and his staff did some. Attendance ranged from 4 to 42 parents. Usually there were more teachers and administrators from the building than there were parents. So honestly, I don't think our parents have a clue. Honestly, I really don't. Other than the SAC members, PTO folks, this year we really have to reach out to them. Let me back off on that statement. I think our elementary parents in our pilot schools, we've been piloting a standards-based report card. Those parents understand them because they're now in second year of seeing the standards and getting feedback on the standards. I think that's the vehicle that's going to be the most significant to get our parents on board, is when we start reporting out to them how well the students have mastered the standards and the evidence and mastery of those standards. So that's going to be a slow rollout for us. Finish K through 2 and then move into 3-5.
Would you be willing to share that? Would you be willing to?
Oh, absolutely.
Because we're still having the philosophical conversation.
Okay. There's still parents that, kindergarten parents that want to know is mastery mean an A?
Yeah.
And so it's a struggle because we've enculturated our entire society to be grade-based. And so this is a huge paradigm shift. So I think that's really going to be our way of getting the parents to come on board, is when we start literally reporting out the standards. It's going to generate more interest on their part.
Yes, Ms.
pick up on a comment you said, Madam Chairman? I'm on the campaign trail, as many of you are, and I have yet to come in contact with a parent or a citizen that has ever read a standard. Every question I get is about the myth of the standards, and it's more curriculum oriented toward things they've seen on Facebook, the internet, whatever, that makes you want to throw up. But it's just so the education component on our part of trying to help these folks understand what is really happening and not to get lost in some of the inflammatory rhetoric that has been out there. And there are issues, and I have quoted a number of times in talks that I've had with people, that there are 3 appropriate questions. And the first one is, what standard do you have a problem with? Second question is, what's wrong with it? Third question is, what do you do to fix it? And if you can deal with those, that makes you focus on the exact standard. And that's when I know that people haven't ever read one, because they can't ever come up with anything like that. So anyway.
I do get a lot of emails and things, and then when I look at it and I say, that's very nice, but this is Ohio. I've not seen this in Manatee County, or in Florida. And I do know I attended the Southern Regional Education Board, so I got a little bit of a history, and that is sreb.org. All of that information is available for free. So that's one of my sources that I go to that I read up on. And I try to say, too, in the public, I said, well, here's what I know. I mean, my twins are now in college, so what you learn on the back end of this is at the end of high school, they're going to take an ACT or an SAT, and that's going to determine a whole lot. And by then, it's too late to back up to 3rd grade or 5th grade or 8th grade and re-chart out what you should have done. So I can see that we know where we need to be at 12th grade to be competitive nationally, and pretty much what Florida is saying is you back it up to here, and there's where you need to be at the stages prior to get there. So, anyone else on this topic?
The only thing I would add is we found we engage parents when they are concerned about their child.
Redistricting?
And so we saw a little bit of that. Yeah. We implemented a new reading series at the elementary, much more difficult text, and found that students that had been doing, parents perceived they're doing well, they're doing okay, all of a sudden on our formative assessments we're not doing well. And that became an opportunity of education for teachers and for parents, that your child's the same, they're performing at a similar level, the expectation has increased because of the complexity of the text. And so we've tried to piggyback times with that, with our teachers and parents, as an opportunity to say that the standards, main idea is the same standard, it's in the old system. What makes this different is it's applied to much more complex text at a much higher level. And they experienced that, and that then became meaningful. And we showed, we believe our students can meet those expectations. We said that to our teachers and our families, and they improved. And we said, look, they're doing better. So I think we've said, if you just call parents in to talk about the new standards, it doesn't resonate very well. But if we use those opportunities where there's concern and questions, and then educate teachers and families, that seems to be a better tool to use in really engaging them in that discussion.
I had a great conversation that I'd like to share with you all, but I attended the Paris Air Show last year on the governor's trip. And I went to sort of see, we talk about this global market and what's going to happen. So the visual of this airline strip all tented up with all of these booths in it, the average age of the folks doing business, and it's global, and the average age was about 25 years old, mostly male. The most females that I saw were actually our own military that were representing companies for different products. So I had this great conversation with this gentleman that said, do you see the difference today? The guys don't go out there with a clipboard trying to sell you one packet. They have to find out exactly what you're using, and we have to figure out how our company can create it, design it, and market it for you, because what you need will be different than what you need, whether it's software and sometimes it's a computer component that has to go into a mechanical component. And these guys at 25 years old have to assess that, figure that out, and write up that contract and get that sale. And he said, this is not like it was before, where you just check the box and send it back to someone that's somewhere else that will fill it out and make that happen. So I think that to me was a great idea of where the global market is. And when I think about these standards, I think about the world that these children will be going out to compete, to have positions. And even in our beginning jobs, there's a man that does medical products right on 301 between Sarasota and Manatee County. And he said, you know, for someone to work on my loading dock to take inventory in, we have security measures, we have scanners, we have computer, they have to use Excel, they have to be able at this level. My receptionist that answers the phone has got to do Word, Excel, know how to download and move files from different operating systems. That's not the same thing that you would think is an entry-level job one generation ago. And that's where we're sending our kids, to that market.
It's actually quantifiable. And so Bill Daggett's organization, the International Center for Leadership, if you go to leadership.org and look at some of the white papers that they have written, the entry-level reading requirements for blue-collar work is now the exact same entry-level reading requirements for white-collar work. There is no difference between them. So college textbooks are at the same level as the job manuals out in the blue-collar world. And it's a Lexile reading score level of about 1,200, which is college level and above. Those are entry-level reading requirements, and they go across all 16 categories, job categories, from manufacturing, travel, tourism, health professions, education, transportation, all of those. And that's the sobering thought. So when we're talking to our teachers about, this isn't about getting the kids to pass a test. This is about our kids having opportunities to have something other than a minimum wage job. And they will have to read at a college entry level to work on the dock, to work on an assembly line, to work just about anywhere other than literally day labor kinds of things. That's what's pressing this.
In high school, I worked at Dunkin' Donuts, and today I don't know that I could do the headset and do the drive-through and then make the coffee of the other person. I don't know how their brain does that, because we only dealt with one customer at a time. So, sure.
I'd like to build on excuse me. I'd like to build on his comment. My favorite Lexile level is for the farmer. It's 1510, and I think we're a big agricultural county. And we have, you know, FFA, and, you know, the kids are out doing all this stuff. And when you think of it, it's a great deal of complexity is required for the farmer. You know, crops, weather, machinery, computers, you know, fertilizer, pesticides. It's very, very complex, and it is a lot more complex at 1510 than, you know, many of the computer programming, for example. It's because of all the variables in farming. So it's great, very challenging these days.
Sure,
Yeah, and
Caroline.
I've been out a lot lately, so I'm listening to people, and what you're getting out there is that the new standards are dumbing down education.
And it's the opposite.
And when it's just the opposite, I know. and
Exactly.
no matter how hard you try to get that message out, I just don't know how you do it. We've had town hall meetings. We've gone into the high schools and had meetings with the high schools. And mostly what people show up are our staff that shows up, but they're still our consumers and taxpayers. And then we've had telephone calls where we will send out, somebody does that. Do you do that? The town halls through telephone? Yes, that's where we got it from. So we've been doing that, doing town halls where we notify our community, this is the number to call in if you have a question, and then whoever's the chair takes the questions, or Lori's there and Scott, and all staff that needs to be there. And that was a better way of trying to reach people than actually holding town hall meetings all over the place for us.
Thank you. If you all would, we'll move on to our last topic, which is how to engage our community involvement.
Which is what I just, so
just segue
talked
right
about.
into it. You just set me up and I just hit it.
Perfect. That's the way to go, Julie.
Do y'all want to go ahead and take the lead on it?
Well, I kind of came up with this question, but basically you always have those components of a community that may not be parents, maybe the business community or so forth, that we want to engage. I know some counties, Miami-Dade is using a number of large county, very diverse county. But I wanted to just kind of throw out that to the two of you and say, are you doing some really unique things that we might certainly look at in terms of reaching out to the business community, reaching out to the colleges, the universities, and just the community at large that we might be able to work on this year?
We did something very unique last year, and we're going to continue it because it was beyond our wildest dreams successful. It's a program that actually started in Ohio, and it was started by some of the unions up there. We partnered with our unions, and it's called I've Been Back to School. I'm sure you can Google it, or let me know. I'll send you our material. It's simply a day that's designated where you identify a community member who wants to come in for the day and teach, or Mr. Swift is custodian for a day. But they come in and they actually work in a school for a day. They don't come in and watch and observe. They come in and teach. So you match a community member with a teacher. They meet the week before. The teacher gives the community member the lesson plans. Sometimes the community member can choose something, if they were like a math major way back when, or some area of interest, they can do that for the day in that classroom. But they come in, and from first thing in the morning to last thing in the afternoon, they teach. And the teacher's in the room. They're there for support. We give them a little break, then we bring them back. We feed them dinner and ask them to share their experience. And it was wildly successful.
That's what I was going to ask you. What was the results, and
Oh.
what
How many
happened
did you
as
do
a
that
result
with?
of it?
We had 25 people from all walks of life that participated, and every single one of them said it was an absolutely remarkable experience, and some of them want to do it again this year. We've charged them with finding a buddy to send to us. We'd like to get up to 45 or 50 this year. We had more teachers willing to take partners than we had partners to come in. Our target was 25. We sort of thought we'd get 10 or 12, but we got 25. And to hear their testimonial at the end of the day was just remarkably moving. And one of the women said, I've not been in a job in my life where I couldn't go to the bathroom when I needed to. Well, that's our profession. That's just what happens. Others they commented about how responsive and bright the kids were. They commented about what the kids were learning in middle school that they had learned in high school. So it was eye-opening. We even had one of our radio talk show hosts.
What is the age? What is the age of the people that volunteer to do that?
Oh, it ranged from mid-20s to mid-60s. Across the board. Oh, it was wildly successful.
How did you reach out to the community to get volunteers?
Well, we used the email lists that we have. Mike Riley, who's our communications person, has a widespread email list. He sent it out. I'm on the chamber for the Chamber Board of Commerce for the county. We use our email list. We just sent out invitations and said, go to this website, fill out an application, send it in, pair them up. So it worked well. October 7th is our day this year. And then we gave them a little plaque they can put on their wall that says, I've been back to school.
And you know,
really
it's
cool.
interesting when you have people who have problems or they raise issues. The first question I always ask is, have you ever been in one of our schools?
Yeah.
And more times than not, the answer might be no.
Yeah.
But
So-
we have been successful with bringing people in. We have a wonderful bistro at our technical institute, and we've
Yeah.
had people in come to lunch and then tour the technical institute. We'd like to take that a step further, maybe get the little yellow school bus and pick some business people up and take them to our middle school where we're doing some very, very wonderful new technologies in math and science labs, tech active classes, show them Sarasota Middle School, and then take them over for lunch and show them the Technical Institute. And we think, we have a lot of people who have expressed an interest in doing that, and we think that might be a good thing. But this teaching is, teaching is one of the toughest jobs in the world. I always say it's one of the most difficult, so that really would enlighten.
Yeah, we had a county commissioner who said he was absolutely exhausted by the end of the day. And he has a new regard for teaching math.
I'd like to share our response to your question. It's fortuitous that we have our Director of Communications and Community and Family Engagement. As I mentioned earlier, we just rolled out our new strategic plan. That was one of the 7 priorities. It translated into one of our 7 goals. I know Steve and his team has just recently completed their work plan that supports that particular goal, and he's got a lot of great things to share about what we're doing in that area.
Thanks, Superintendent. First off is what we call a community engagement forum, where we work directly with the SAC leaders and the principals and try to get together at least every 6 weeks at different locations around the district. And it's an agenda-driven meeting, a two-way communications process. We don't come out with any preordained agenda. We survey all of the SAC leaders on what information they'd like to hear through simplesurveymonkey.com. We base the agenda on that, and then we get the district senior leaders to present small presentations, 10, 15 minutes. We start out with the formal conversation. Then after that's wrapped up, we talk about a multitude of different topics after that. They usually go for an hour, between an hour and 2 hours. We did see typically attendance start to drop off after the first couple, which is going to be the case for anything.
But we brought it back with free pizza.
Free pizza, that certainly helped. Free drinks, but we also started an sort of an offshoot organization from the Community Engagement Forum it's called the Parent Task Force, and it's made up of the SAC leaders who were really involved, and they attended every meeting, and not only attended, but drove the conversation. So what the superintendent had me do is to try to work with these folks. We signed a charter, and they have a goal. They have an office in our district building that's locked. They have whiteboards. They have their own computer, printer, telephone lines. They come in and brainstorm and write, they on a couple weeks, a month, and I think what we want out of them basically is to find out what their best practices are to try to help the fellow SAC committee members from their different schools, because there's a certain amount of schools that just don't participate in the community engagement forums. And from what I hear from these SAC leaders, they may have gone through the process of signing their names to the document, but nothing important happens. So we're going to take that even a step level in September after the new elections are done for the SAC leadership. Last year, we had a lot of moving pieces. This year, our first community engagement forum is going to be formalized training and incorporate the parent task force into that with the best practices and hopefully start them off on the right foot. And then every 6 weeks, we'll start again with the agenda-driven. And again, I think it's important to speak to these people because they are our contact with the parents and the students, and that's who we really need to be communicating. A couple of other quick programs we have. Soup at the Soup. We've already got 4 scheduled where the superintendent goes to a different restaurant around the county, and this is for the public. We send out a press release, we invite everyone, the superintendent puts on an apron, a board member comes out, puts on an apron, serves soup and salad to members of the community, and again, this isn't agenda-driven. Whoever has a topic, it's an open forum. They, a lot of great information, and again, it's about speaking to the community, not sending out a press release from downtown and getting out from our downtown office into the community. This district's been through a lot over the past few years, and I said during the job interview process, we've got to go out and engage them. They're not going to believe anything we say from if we just stay downtown. We've got to go out and meet them face to face. I'm trying to...
Madam Chairman?
I think that's it right now. Oh, and our website has been completely redesigned, very active in social media, and complete transparency. Everything that's brought up at the board meeting is posted on there immediately. So if anyone has a question, our easiest answer is just go to manateeschools.net and you'll find it. And that seems to be pretty successful so far. Oh, and the food bus, we've... Every month it seems we have another idea, and the chair and the board has some great ideas. Superintendent, my job is just to sort of organize everything and try to find the people to do it. Then we got Ms. Carpenter with the school volunteers, and I mean we've got a great staff that is completely engaged. And I thought the summer would slow down a little bit. It just got more busy, and culminating with a partnership with the Bradenton Marauders this Saturday night with Bright House Communications. They're offering $1 tickets to the Saturday's game, and Bright House Communications stepped up to the plate, and they have 500 backpacks for the first 500 kids, 12 and under, coming in. So it's just a matter of getting out of the office and into the community and engaging, because I think a board member said it last night. We have a lot of great community organizations that really care about the schools, and it's just getting out there and meeting them. And it's not all monetary, it's volunteer, it's support, it's just getting out, whether it's reading to a student. And we've had a lot of success over the past school year, and we're going to get bigger and better this year.
I'd just like to expand a little bit, because we've had various sectors that have been very helpful to us and partnered with us. The Chamber of Commerce worked very hard, and I know Mr. Gauze was involved with this, as were several others, on getting the workforce equity funding. We were only getting about half, about 55% of that workforce funding that we were supposed to get. So the Chamber partnered with us on that. They also have a 4th grade Project Teach program where someone goes in to the classrooms and explains the once a year, the Big Bang Project. Both the chair and the superintendent are ex officio on the chamber board, and so we have an active, expanded dialogue with the chamber around business partners in education. My experience with the school district, I came in as a volunteer. I was in the AmeriCorps Vista program. After I retired, 6 days after I retired, I signed up for AmeriCorps Vista, and then got, and that was a wonderful program. That was a mix of recent college graduates and retirees like me. In fact, I ran into one of them that was in my program 5 years ago. She's teaching in one of our schools now. So that was this morning. And there are thousands of volunteers in our schools doing great work, and one-on-one with the kids, and they're all fingerprinted, and so we have a lot of community participation. A couple of us are involved, 3 of us actually up here are in the Kiwanis Club, which has as a goal, serving children as a goal. So I think Manatee County has 7 or 8 Kiwanis clubs, and all geared toward helping children. So, and we're all tied in together. But I think it's a very good partnership, and we need to expand it. We need to get more people we get in our schools. And this area has a boatload, literally, of snowbirds who come down, many of them in October, and then leave in the May time frame, which is the time that we need them in our schools. So, and they're looking for meaningful work to do, and that's very exciting. Many of them get a little tired of playing golf all the time, except for this one.
Could you tell them about the ladies at Able Elementary that you met?
Oh, this is a wonderful story. And it really depends on the school and the principal of the school. Through some contacts of mine, I found a group of called the Reading Ladies. It was 8 women and 3 men. Some of them are from Longboat Key. Most of them live along the University Parkway corridor in Palm Air and University Park. They're a good 20 years older than I am. And they're in their late 80s, and many of them, they're retired psychologists. Many of them went to the Northeastern schools. They have PhDs, EDD degrees. They have this, the Reading Ladies have this 8-week program that's around art, writing, and music. And they come into the school and they work with the most challenged children, 3rd graders who don't know how to read. And they write stories with them, and they do it in the fall in October and in the spring. And I just saw the principal Monday at the State of the Schools, and he can hardly wait to have these women, the Reading Ladies with 3 men, anyway, come back and help out in the schools. And so that's a whole cadre of human capital that really helps us educate the young. But they're amazing. And when I took them, I kind of handpicked the principal. I wasn't sure, if anybody would understand the dynamics of this group of volunteers who were highly educated and highly committed to children. Man, within 30 seconds, I could leave the room. The principal loved them, and they loved the principal, and they knew exactly what they were going to do. And so how could they be helpful? They actually had been working in the Sarasota schools, but they came north of the county line.
One second, Ms. Zucker. Mr. Minor.
Thank you, Caroline. Everybody in this room is a great believer in public education, or we would not be here. We dedicate our lives to it, basically. We have some other activities. And, I salute everybody here. And it's certainly, that's why I'm here. And the delivering broadly to our community, the message that it's public education, it's a public school, it's ours. Everybody in the community, it's our schools. It's we all together are going to drive the quality of the school. It's our involvement with it. It's the kids. It's your school too. Pride, take care of it. And how we cultivate this ownership feeling is more than, I used to say, well, the solution to everything is glazed donuts. That was my metaphor. Well, put out the glazed donuts and people would show up, or pizzas or something like that. There's a little bit of truth to that. But it's not sustaining as ownership of the glazed donuts, of the pizzas. And that brings me to the school advisory councils. And I think some of you know I was very active, and that's really how led me to being on the board in school advisory councils. And I was, governor area for the Florida Association of School Advisory Councils, because this was a way of not only just, it was beyond the glazed donuts, but the idea that there was not just listening, but involvement in making decisions about what went on in the schools. I think it was about 15 years ago, the legislature actually said, there's something about school-based decision-making and community involvement through SACS. That SACS would be involved in the budget of schools. Can you believe that? Now, it was sort of a bottom-up involvement of, our democracy, our schools. And we've seemed to wander way away from that. Now it's top-down. It's Washington to Tallahassee, to the school board, to the schools, to the teachers, and we sort of rubbed out, to a large extent, the idea of SACs going up. And I'm posing a question, to everyone here. To what extent have you cultivated the idea that these SACs, belong, to, the staff, the parents, the students? The idea that parents can elect representatives to a statutory body created by statute, supposed to meet in the sunshine and make decisions in the sunshine. To what extent is there really parent participation in those elections? What percentage of parents or guardians actually elect representatives? That their vote counts, that the SAC counts, that the direction of their school is affected by them. Maybe we've made it such that they have no voice, that it doesn't count at all. But I think that's the wrong direction, frankly. If we're going to make this, our communities, our country, prosper with the best public education possible, there has to be this sense of ownership. It's ours, the public's. And I think that comes in part by not just the glazed donuts, but really what you do. Your involvement has an effect, has some direction. It's not just, well, we got to compete with the Austrians or the Thais or South Koreans, but it's our education to make better citizens, better educated. And I think that whatever we might be able to do to make that involvement, to make it meaningful, for, parents and staff involved in SACs is a good thing to do. And I'm just, you don't have to answer, but you might ask yourself, really, in each school, what percentage of parents are involved in casting a ballot to elect a parent representative? And I'll be surprised if in any school you get over 5%. And in most places, 5% is not even an F. That's a Z.
Thank you, Mr. Minor.
Thank you.
Mr. Caroline.
Mistress? Hi.
Hi, Caroline.
I wanted to piggyback on what Karen said about the mentors in the schools. I work part-time for Jewish Family and Children's Service, and I'm the volunteer coordinator for resources for the agency. And what I'm seeing now is a lot of people coming out to tutor and to mentor, and that makes such a difference in the schools that they're in. We have a safe alternative to out-of-school suspension program, and that's where these adults go to tutor and mentor the kids there. And it really has worked out a great partnership between Jewish Family and the school system, where we can even take advantage of the school system's training for mentors and tutors. So I just wanted to share, it's another piece and another venue for getting help into our schools.
I'd just like to add on to what Mr. Minor had mentioned, and my humor around pizza was purely humor, but what we really found was making those sessions meaningful for our parents, our SACs, to come in and to engage them not only in what's going on with updates with the district, but engage their input and their feedback around initiatives, get their ideas and suggestions. We're firmly behind the fact that as you increase your capacity around bringing your different organizations, your parents, et cetera, in, non-for-profits, we have a great partnership with a lot of non-for-profits around early learning. As you engage them more upfront, as you seek their advice and counsel and input, what we saw was a greater attendance, to where I believe, Steve, at the last meeting we had for the school year, it was completely packed, right? We had about 80 parents there from the different SACs. And so to say what Mr. Minor said, they need to feel like they're valued, they need to feel like they have input, that they're being engaged, and being engaged early on in any initiative, rather than this is what we're doing, this is what we're thinking of doing, what are your ideas, what are your feelings around it. And I know Steve had mentioned the parent task force. That was kind of born out of that. And it gives us greater fidelity, and part of their focus and mission is to how to refine our SACs. What are the job descriptions and responsibilities of being on the SAC? What is the process for that? How long are you on the SAC? What is your role and responsibilities? And give clarity around that and give it more meaning to be on a SAC. So they're working diligently right now and doing that and coming up with other ideas to refine the whole process. One of the things that came out of the parent task force was that there's no really formal training or understanding of what the role is and what's the structure of organization. So they've been working on that. So I really would encourage to think about how you create, if you don't have one, a parent task force. We have, I think, 6 people on it, Steve? 6 parents. And as he mentioned, as a team, they meet regularly. They have an office in our building. They have resources. And their whole mission is to how to increase and enhance the utilization of SACs in the education process in Manatee County.
I have a question. Are the SACs mostly elementary schools? Do you have more of them in middle and high schools? Because I'm finding it's really great to get these parents engaged in elementary, but it gets more difficult middle and high.
It does, because by then we see a trend between the sports and all the other academics, and most of the parents by then, as the children get older, they're picking up more jobs. And it does seem that although the economy is better, parents who have jobs are working more or having second jobs in order to maintain a lower standard of living than what they had, like, say, 10 years ago. And the ones that are actually doing well are the ones that can adjust to a lower lifestyle. I know when I was a molecular histologist when I had twins and said, I'm staying home. It was a very big change, you know, going to having your own garden, growing your own vegetables, driving older cars. But that was a decision that we made. We didn't have any family or support system, so not a decision I've ever regretted a day. But it was not an easy transition, and I think about the change that we're going through now and for families, and when you think about those elementary years and how fast they go, I don't know that your kids will ever remember if you had a new car or you went to a fancy vacation. They remember the ones where we got rained out and we all played, you know, bingo, and that's the memory that they have. So it's interesting what children think is important, sometimes what we think is important as parents.
Jane, if I can address your question, every school is supposed to have a school advisory council. Now, I think my experience over many years was that there's certainly a mixture of desire, you know, to use kind of a metaphor, Mr. Diplomacy of Mr. Bradley here, that among principals with respect to how they regard, you know, school advisory councils. I think that a majority regard that as, oh, gee, we just have to, we're supposed to do it, so we're going to have one. They don't view it as an opportunity, you know, to, you know, build a school to make it better. They don't like the idea that it meets in the sunshine. They have sunshine requirements, and to the extent that they operate, they just sort of, it's kind of pro forma, not, you know, an avenue of generating support for public education, involvement by the parents. To change that attitude comes from us on the board, going down to say, this is important. We want to see from our schools participation of our school advisory councils. We want every parent to know, and we want every parent to be involved in the election of representatives and take an interest in what goes on in those meetings. And we expect those of our principals, we expect those of the supervisors of the principals to have that kind of involvement. And it can be done. I hope it will be done. And I think most of you share. If we're going to do it, you know, let's make sure that we get that involvement going. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Minor. Mr. Gauze.
Thank you. And everybody made good points.
Pull your mic over.
Yeah.
Everybody's made good points. And I think one of the issues, and Mr. Minor's correct, sometimes SACs are viewed by some as a necessary evil, as opposed to the embracement. But really, one of the issues that I see happen that I perceive to happen is, and it may be partly because of all the standards and everything else, everybody gets busy. And, you know, at the district, we're busy. At the school sites, everybody's busy. And quite frankly, in the homes, everybody's busy. And it seems sometimes that we forget how important it is to pull that community in. We do have a lot of great resources available to our schools. The trick is finding a way, you know, to make the schools want to engage those resources and to be willing to invest the time to engage those resources. In our district, we're starting to try various things to try and really pull the parent groups in. But one of the things that we are going to have to, I think we all have to kind of focus on effort on is to have the school sites recognize the importance of pulling those parents in, pulling those neighbors in, those reading volunteers and things like that, that would help if asked and invited, but oftentimes don't. And I'm going to use this as one example. The Chamber of Commerce works with Manatee Education Foundation Business Partners Awards every year. It's surprising how hard it is sometimes to get the schools to send thank yous to the businesses that volunteer resources and time to the schools. And, you know, in business, it's a no-brainer. Somebody helps you out, somebody gives you something, you say thank you. You know, oftentimes we sometimes forget how important that little thing is, and somehow that's something I think that we all need to look at. How do we change the culture? And our district, the district is trying to find some ways to do that, and hopefully we can grow it out there. But I think that is going to be one of our challenges for community engagement. It's going to have to be all the way down at the grassroots level, and that is when we can do that. When for our 53 school sites, we can get more than 80 people to show up at a district-wide community engagement forum from the SACs. You know, that sounds like a lot, and it's great compared to what it used to be, but it really needs to be 4, 5, 6 times that number, and that's things that we've got to, you know, that we're focusing some extra effort on. I hope we have some success on it, but it'll be, it continues to be a work in progress, and the challenge I think that we all face.
Thank you, Mr. Gauze. Dr. Green.
No, I just wanted to give an example of one of our high schools that I attended their SAC meeting, and the parent truly was the SAC president, and they had 30 parents attend their SAC meeting. And they opened every SAC up with one of the standards that their high school students had to learn, and the SAC members had to take a one question test on that standard, and whoever got it right got their name and won something. But this was Manatee High School, and they then decided what to use their school improvement dollars on, and they wanted to spend it on science, and every teacher had to come in and do a presentation to show what they were going to use that $50 or whatever, and they truly felt like they were giving input. So that is one example of our schools, Manatee High School, that at the high school level, the SAC can work. I just wanted to share that story. It's a great story.
I'd like to dovetail off of Diana, but I was invited out to speak to their SAC, and then I encouraged them to invite Diana out because they had a lot of curiosity and questions around the standards, et cetera. And so I was equally impressed with their SAC there at Manatee High School and how effective they were in really leveraging themselves into the education process there in the school. And I think it's ultimately valuable for us as a school district to work with every school, every principal, to create that kind of culture with our SACs and our parents, to encourage that and their involvement around that. And so, you know, I'm glad Diana brought that up because it's something I experienced early on in going out and speaking to that SAC. And, you know, ultimately we should, as Mr. Miner said, getting to that level of fidelity across our schools in our county.
Thank you. We pretty much have covered our topics, and if you all are ready to adjourn, we can do some photographs out in the lobby. I want to thank you all for traveling to Manatee, but I also want to thank you all for holding us close, the messages that you send. It has been a rocky road for Manatee County. We just met Fund Balance. We had 20% of our schools go up. We scored higher on our way out on FCATS on every category, and I just want to thank you all because you've been our partners, and I know that you're cheering us on, and I really do appreciate that as a board member. I want to thank you all, and we're adjourned.